Greetings and salutations, fellow humans. It's the 9th of December 2025, and I am Thaddeus Satori. If you listened to my last podcast, thank you. In it, I encouraged people to begin preparing as individuals and then gradually spread outward. I even offered a few baby steps on how to get started. In this podcast, though, I want to stress the importance of a simultaneous top-down engagement. You may feel like you have no control or that your vote doesn't matter, but when enough of us peasants unite, we can force through some of the significant changes that are needed. Of course, we can't know which efforts will be successful, but we do know that if we surrender in advance, the battle has already been lost. The word democracy comes from the Greek words demos, meaning common people, and kratos, meaning force or might. But democracy had been the norm for most of human history. We evolved in small, largely egalitarian groups. Decisions were made collectively, people shared in both the labors and fruits of daily life, and it was a lot easier to keep egos in check. But all that changed. With the rise of agriculture and the corresponding emergence of city-states, egos rose to the top, and pyramids of wealth and power began to take shape. As populations and areas of control grew, feudal systems formed in many parts of the world. At the top were the kings and queens, who ultimately owned everything, including the people. But since they couldn't govern alone, they granted large estates to lords and barons in exchange for loyalty, taxes, and military protection. The lords then doled out parcels to lesser nobles and knights under similar terms. At the bottom, of course, were the peasants. They risked loss of life and limb to maintain the entire egoic structure. Sound familiar? Limited democracies came and went over the millennia in various forms and places, but since the goal has always been to preserve the power structure, the decision makers invariably came from the upper echelons of society. When concessions were made to the people on the bottom, it wasn't because the leaders had suddenly come to Jesus. It was because they had become so greedy and out of control that the peasants threatened to burn the entire system down. Hungry people get angry. Even as recently as the 1930s, FDR is alleged to have said that the redistribution of wealth was necessary so that the entire capitalist system did not come crashing down under peasant revolt. This fight is ongoing, folks, and it has always been vertical. We are often taught that one of the first major steps toward modern democracy was the English King John's agreement to the terms laid out in the Magna Carta of 1215, and indeed this is true. It stated that everyone was subject to the laws of the land, including the monarch, and it established principles like due process, protection from illegal imprisonment, aka habeas corpus, and it placed limitations on feudal payments. But again, it wasn't done because the ruling class had had some mushroom-inspired epiphany into the true meaning of love thy neighbor. It came about because the barons were fed up with the king's heavy taxation, arbitrary rule, and disastrous wars with France. They wanted more power and a bigger cut of the pie for themselves, and they literally forced the king to agree under threat of armed revolt. No one gave a damn about the serfs. In the 14th century, the Middle Ages gradually transitioned into the Renaissance, literally rebirth. It kicked off in Florence in modern-day Italy in about 1350 and gradually migrated north over the next century or so. It had rediscovered the long-forgotten Greek and Roman texts, and people relearned their ancient philosophies, cultures, art, and science. By the late 1600s, it was morphing into the Age of Enlightenment, which lasted only about a century. This was a powerful movement, emphasizing reason and scientific inquiry. It challenged traditional authority and led to the ideas of human rights, liberalism, and modern democracy. Just by chance, this is when the United States came into being. Timing really is crucial. The majority of the founders were students of the Enlightenment, and they wrote many documents reflecting those values. One such text was the Constitution of the United States, and because they understood that we humans could easily be corrupted, they established three separate branches of government with the idea that two should keep the other in check, lest it become too powerful. Sort of speed bumps on the road to tyranny. The other main foresight they had was to recognize that, over time, culture would change, and the Constitution would need to change with it. So they installed a process to amend it. As there have been only 27 changes to the Constitution since it took effect in 1789, I suppose you could argue that they set the bar a bit too high. But that's a topic for another debate. Is the Constitution perfect? Hell no. Were the writers perfect? Not possible. Did everyone get exactly what they wanted? Of course not. They had to compromise, but they kept their eye on the big picture, the founding of a new nation, and they didn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I know that my country has done and is doing some terrible things, but it has also done some great things, even if by accident or for selfish reasons, just like us humans and the institutions we create. I've lived in several countries in my life and visited many more, and to my knowledge, the United States is one of the very few to which a foreign-born national can move and become a true part of the nation. I can never become French or Russian or Japanese or Thai, no matter how long I live in one of these countries. But anyone can become American. The U.S., despite its numerous flaws, checkered history, and setbacks, has been a wonderful human experiment, and it's worth fighting for and improving. I understand, especially in the case of young people, that politics can seem boring and beyond your control, even dirty. But you also need to appreciate the fact that whether you participate or not, it has a great impact on your life and your future. Government determines whether you can find a job or a new place to live, how much you pay for rent and groceries. It decides whether you have affordable health care, good food, and clean air and water. It builds roads, bridges, schools, and sewage systems. And, like it or not, the federal government is the only entity large and powerful enough to stand up to the insane oligarchs and corporations that are so obsessed with growth and profit, they are quite willing to kill for it, even if it means sacrificing their own children and grandchildren. Addiction's a terrible thing. So, if you've won one of life's major lotteries by being born into a democracy, you have the responsibility to educate yourself, at least to a functioning level, and to keep track of what your representatives are up to. We humans are not to be trusted, especially when it comes to money and power. That's all I've got for now. Please take care of yourselves and those around you. And please, engage while you still can. Thanks for listening. Cheers.